Some Republicans are calling for your resignation. The Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, didn't go that far. Listen to this, and then we'll get your response.
Unfortunately, this leadership has cut a sharp contrast with the Biden administration's Secretary of Transportation. Even amidst a catalog of crises on his watch, from this and other recent train derailments to the meltdown in air travel back during the holiday season, Secretary Buttigieg has seemed more interested in pursuing press coverage for woke initiatives and climate nonsense than in attending to basic elements of his day job.
Woke initiatives and climate nonsense. What's your response, Mr. Secretary?
Well, first of all, Leader McConnell was there celebrating the replacement of the Brent Spence Bridge, a major infrastructure project that we are funding in his state. I would not call the Brent Spence Bridge a woke initiative. As for climate, climate is not nonsense. Dealing with climate change is one of the biggest things that people like me and people like him will be remembered for after we're gone. And third, he is the caucus leader in the Senate. He could be a partner to us right now in making sure that there are fewer rail disasters in the future. As I mentioned earlier, the freight rail industry has wielded a lot of power here in Washington. I would love to see Leader McConnell join us in standing up to them. There are specific things that could be done right now. He's a Senate leader. He could work with us to do things like raise the cap on the fines. Right now, a major safety violation that our department discovers, the most we can fine a multi-billion-dollar rail company for is in the six figures. He could work with us right now to accelerate the timeline for bringing in tank cars, fortified tank cars that are less likely to spill when there's a derailment. He could work with us right now to give our department a freer hand on things like braking regulations and regulations on hazardous material transportation. So if he is serious about this, if anyone, Republican or Democrat or Independent, is serious about this, they can work with us today.
Have you reached out to them?
Is just politics. Absolutely. We have made it very clear publicly what Congress can do. I know there's some talk of legislation coming together. We are actively proposing the things that we think need to happen, in addition to doing the things that we can do with the powers that we do have, like a program for stepped-up inspection along some of the routes that are impacted by these kinds of materials. And something that I re-upped my call for the railroads to do that they could literally do today, which is to join a close call reporting system that protects whistleblowers who spot issues that could lead to accidents. Right now, not one freight railroad company participates. I've given them till the end of the week to let me know whether they're going to accept my call for them to join this or reject it.
Here's Mitch McConnell joining a long list of Republicans who've decided to exploit a disaster exacerbated by deregulation, which is a core tenet of his Republican Party. Because, of course, the party responsible for deregulation is whining about the effects of deregulation. Now, McConnell attacks Buttigieg for, quote, seeking press coverage for woke initiatives. And it's so ironic that McConnell used that word, because here's Pete Buttigieg just a few days earlier, and let me know if anything sticks out to you.
You know how a broken clock is right at least twice a day. One thing he's exactly right about is that environmental disasters tend to happen more frequently and more painfully to lower income communities. We call that environmental justice, and yet if I use those words, I'm sure he'll be the first one to say that we're too woke to be paying attention to the bread and butter of our jobs. Part of the bread and butter of our job is to keep people safe from being harmed or killed, which is what regulation, sometimes an unpopular word, is all about. It's what enforcement is all about. It's what accountability is all about.
So on one hand, Republicans will attack Buttigieg for not focusing on low-income folks who are disproportionately impacted by these accidents, and then when Buttigieg does seek to focus on low-income folks who are disproportionately impacted, Republicans will criticize him for focusing on environmental justice because it's too woke. Heads I win, tails you lose. Notice, too, the dichotomy between what Pete Buttigieg is doing as transportation secretary and what Republicans are saying that Buttigieg is doing as transportation secretary. The guy is currently crisscrossing the entire country, actually breaking ground on the raft of infrastructure projects that were funded by the infrastructure package. Like Pete said, one of those projects was the Brent Spence Bridge, which connects two states that do not even vote for Democrats in Kentucky and Ohio, and Mitch McConnell literally attended. And yet that guy is saying that Buttigieg is spending all of his time on woke initiatives? Are you starting to understand how Republicans will perpetuate their narratives with zero regard for what is actually happening in reality? For example, the Mueller report will say that it can't exonerate Trump, and yet Trump will claim complete and total exoneration. Fox hosts will say that Giuliani and Sidney Powell were full of it when they claim that Dominion stole the last election, and yet those same Fox hosts will air those people anyway. You can have reality, or you can have the world that Republicans pretend exists, but you can't have both. But here's the most important part of all of this, a point that Pete Buttigieg also brought up. While McConnell and Republicans are so fast to criticize this administration for a train derailment that could have been prevented by more regulation, how many of them are calling for that regulation? How many of them are calling for the reimposition of the regulations that were stripped away under Trump? How many of them are calling for fines for skirting safety regulations? None, because these people aren't actually interested in solutions, but they will jump at the chance to attack a Democrat for a cheap political win. And ask yourself too, why they've chosen Buttigieg as their principal target. Surely the guy who's been transportation secretary for 2 years is not personally responsible for an accident that could have been prevented if there were more safety regulations, which is what Republicans have spent every moment of their time in office stripping away. But they know that Pete is a contender for higher office moving forward, and so they were already looking for a reason to attack him, and now they got it. Again, they're not looking to fix anything. If they were, they would propose even a single piece of legislation in response to this. They're just looking for a political attack, and they're doing it at the expense of the people in East Palestine who are contending with the effects of this spill right now. And by the way, this has been a recurring theme on the right. Find the tragedy and exploit it for political purposes under the pretense of accountability. Here's Kevin McCarthy from a few years back admitting out loud that the point of the Benghazi Select Committee was to hurt Hillary Clinton's poll numbers.
Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was unbeatable, right? But we put together a Benghazi special committee, a select committee. What are her numbers today? Her numbers are dropping. Why? Because she's untrustable. But no one would have known any of that had happened had we not fought and made that happen.
So they'll feign outrage and air their righteous indignation when in reality, they're just looking to help themselves politically. That's the playbook, and they will use it over and over because they know it works. The problem comes when they've got people like Kevin McCarthy who are too stupid to keep it secret. So the next time you hear a Republican whine about accidents like the one in East Palestine, just ask what they're doing to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Just ask what substantive solutions they're seeking. Just ask whether they're willing to do anything besides just whine about Democrats so they can get a 5-minute cable hit on Fox. Because I can promise you that when it comes time to actually govern, none of those people want anything to do with it. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.